IVM.
The non-alcoholic segment has witnessed a ton of activity in recent times. From being a fringe category with barely any players, it's now filled with multiple brands. Not just in the tonic water and ginger ale categories, but also many a foray plus innovation in the connected beverages areas that most people didn't see coming. One of the earliest players in this space was Swami, and they've been able to move from their core products of tonic water to building a whole new category of sober drinks to now a 2-calorie cola and even a salted lemonade. They've also been able to build a distinct brand that has a clear focus on the mass premium market. To understand this sector better and tap into the changes the pandemic has brought about, plus also deep dive into where it's really headed, we have Aneesh Bhasin, the co-founder of Svami, on the show this week. I'm Varun, and this is Advertising is Dead. Be right back with Aneesh.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We talked to Aneesh. Aneesh, I must tell you, you are one of the most well-prepared guests you've had in a long time. You came in with a mic setup and all the things done. We normally have to kind of scamper around, figure out how to make the guests get in some earphones. But you're the most prepared guest we've had in for a while.
Perfect. I will wait for my trophy.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something I'm going to hand over to you offline. But I'm happy we're having this chat because even sometime back. On the other podcast I host called Think Fast, we were talking about this entire segment, right, and how it's really evolved over recent times. You obviously had large players on the Alco-Bev side. You also had a few players. I think minuscule number of players in just the. Some call it mixer, some call it the non-alcohol segment. But when you guys got into it at a point of there was nobody else really playing in this field. Now, obviously, there are many people there, but I thought it'd be interesting to kind of get a perspective from you about. How do you see this segment right now? How do you see this non-alcoholic segment? And what do you guys kind of experience, especially like I would say last 2-3 years?
I think the segment looks a lot more exciting from the outside than what it actually, what the ground realities are. I guess that would be for any business really. So the category is developing for sure. At Svami, we have about 12 products now. So we are not only playing in the tonic water category. That category, I would say, is at the max about a 350 crore a year sort of a market in India. And that category is predominantly linked to gin. As much as a lot of people think, no, tonics people can have by itself and stuff, majority of it will be with gin. Then might be a little bit with vodka, but predominantly it's gin. Gin is growing, which is great. But the other categories like the lemon-based drinks, those are huge, right? Every brand like a Pepsi, Coke has lemon products. Yeah. So we are exploring a lot of other products as well and not only tonics. Tonic seems to be that thing that people in all our circles talk about. But if we look at India as a country, tonic would still be a smaller part of what a non-alcoholic beverage company can today make in the country.
And I think that's an interesting point, right? And I'm looking to the two most recent releases you guys had. You obviously had the 2-cal cola and you had the salted lemonade. Yeah. Two very distinctly, you would associate with, like you mentioned, like Pepsi, Coke, etc. They're the guys who kind of get into spaces like these. Did you have to rethink how you approach building out these products and building them out under your brand when you had to do it, considering
Absolutely.
How everything else worked before that?
So for us, there was a lot of things to consider. We were very clear that at no point are we going to cheapen our brand. At no point to make a cheaper product are we going to use, let's say, artificial products, change to inferior packaging. Like all of those things were out of the question. But we were very clear that in Swami's journey, we have to have more affordable products. We started with tonics that are at 85, the tonics and the ginger ale. The zero proof range, the non-alcoholic rum and cola and two non-alcoholic gin and tonics, they're at 95. And we were very clear that our next range of products have to be lower. And then perhaps even a lower range than that, price-wise. But quality cannot dip, packaging cannot dip. So then there were so many questions on this, right? Will we be perceived as someone making cheaper products now or more inferior products now? If people discover us with a 65 rupees product, will a 85 rupee tonic then look too expensive to them? So a lot of these kind of things were considered, but what we realized is that your audiences can be very, very different. With the salted lemonade and the 2 cola, we're looking at entering a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities. For them, paying 20 rupees above a Diet Coke is their premium, right? If it was 40 rupees above a Diet Coke, we think we would have been too expensive. And then we again would have been in the same smaller niche that the tonics play in. The lemonade, even the way these products were thought out, right? We knew we wanted to do a lemonade, but what lemonade can we do? Will a elderflower lemonade be appealing to most people? Will they understand it? Will people really understand a Gondraj lime thing on a mass level? And then to us, it was salted lemonade. Sweet salted Nimbu soda is like the most ordered drink perhaps in the country. And we weren't happy with any similar product in the market. And we're like, okay, let's just build that out. It's a relatable product. We don't have to explain what this product is. And let's make sure it's at a lot more affordable price point. So these products are at 65 rupees. And eventually we are pretty sure that these products will come in slightly cheaper and maybe in cans or other formats as well.
I think that's really interesting because you talk about tier 2 and tier 3. And I feel what's really happening, I think especially, and I'd say over the last 5 odd years is that people across not just tier 1, but I think tier 2 and tier 3 are looking for access. They're looking for access to stuff you get in your major cities. What everyone's also looking at, how can I bring that experience home while it's been in a conversation now, I think, over the last 2 years, primarily because of all of us being stuck at home. But I think there was already a trend there. People are already kind of looking at that to an extent, but I don't know if that's how you guys saw it. And so my long-winded lead up to a question is basically that how does this kind of bring it down to, let's say, going full hog retail? Has digital played a part there as well? And so how have we been able to balance that out?
So if I look at pre-pandemic, and right now it's so confusing to even remember which year the pandemic started
exactly.
But before the first wave, the first lockdown, about 80% of our revenue was restaurants, and only about 20% was retail. Of course, since day one, since our first business plan, eventually over a period of 3-4 years, that changes more towards retail as any FMCG would. The pandemic has just really accelerated that for us. So even last financial year, we still grew 2 times. Retail grew like some 20 times. And I think digital and all has just accelerated everything. But I have one slight difference in the craze I say about D2C. I do think for a brand, at least like us, offline retail is extremely important. I don't think we can be an Amazon first or a online first sort of a brand because people do want the products quick. And people, because again, if you look at some of our products that are linked more to alcohol consumption, you don't buy alcohol 2-3 days in advance. A lot of times your stuff is bought for the party you're having today or, when people are coming over. So as much as Amazon and everything helps for us, our offline distribution has picked up a lot more.
And when you look at that, do you also see that the consumers change? Do you feel that I've seen the consumers, especially when you guys started off, and I want to get to how you guys started off. I think it's a very interesting story. But have you seen the consumer change from the time you guys started off to now? Just in terms of you guys came in saying, okay, this is the kind of people our consumers are going to be like. But how has that evolved?
So I think when we started, we did not do too much consumer research or any of that stuff. So Swami is me, Rahul, and Sahil. And Sahil doesn't drink. He's a teetotaler. Rahul and I think, easily compensate for his not drinking. But I think for us, when we started, the whole thing was that we believed in the products we had to make because in our circles, people wanted an alternative product to a Schweppes and that wasn't there. Or, when we saw what was happening abroad, if you had a restaurant with 50 gins, you also had 20 mixers. as options. And again, in India, it was only Schweppes that was available. We also knew what was happening in the gin space. Rahul, of course, is involved with Stranger and Sons. I know the Greater Than team really, really well. So we knew what everyone was building before they'd even launched. And for us, we thought that, okay, we know that there is a certain amount of audience that is at least going to drink gin. So the tonics will work. Let's wet our feet with this and then see which products to launch at what time. So when we started, our predominant consumers would have been gin drinkers. Today, that's expanded to a lot more people. You don't only have to be a gin drinker to be a Swami consumer. There are a lot of people who don't drink alcohol. Gujarat for us is a very interesting state. Gujarat is doing a decent amount of revenue for us. Smaller cities like Surat, a lot of cafes keep us. So I think the audience has changed from, or rather, initially it was limited to more of gin drinkers. Today we are targeting anyone above 21, 22 who wants to just have a tasty drink. And that for us is the idea of building Swami, that you should be having a tasty drink doesn't mean that it has to have alcohol in it necessarily.
How did you get into this space? I know you started off, you were a photographer for a while and at some point you transitioned to hospitality and the Alco-Bev industry. But how did that happen? How did you go from one to the other and how did this kick off for you?
So I came to Bombay to study photography. I ended up teaching at the same institute right after my course got over. After that, started working, started freelancing, and I really got lucky, or I think I was at the right place at the right time. I ended up shooting a lot for travel magazines. I've shot for Condé Nast Traveler. I've shot for Lonely Planet. Some of those assignments were to places like, let's say, New Zealand or South Africa, where you got to go to vineyards and stuff. And then I got commissioned to shoot for a book on the Indian alcohol industry.
Nice.
And because of that book, I literally had to travel to every winery in Nashik to photograph the place, meet the owners. And a lot of them would just oblige with a wine tasting. And I had no taste at all. You could have given me a 30-year-old whiskey and I would have had a thumbs up to it and had it. That was my sense of drinking at that point. But it just seemed interesting that, okay, this seems like a new hobby one can really get into and, just trying to figure out what the fuss was. And I still remember I'd gone to take a portrait of this one person for the same book. And when I went to their office, all of them were tasting wine, but they were tasting wine that had gone bad. And I was like, man, this is really interesting. Why are people on a Friday evening sitting and tasting wines that have gone bad? And they're like, this is how you realize what off notes in wines can be. And I think that was a turning point where I was like, okay, I really need to understand this more because it just seems like a very complex hobby to get into. And I think that's where the whole interest in alcohol really started. Being a photographer, again, I ended up shooting for Diageo. I shot a whole campaign for Hennessy back in the day. And now we worked with Hennessy at a product level. So that to me is really, really, it's like a nice circle. I got a lot of exposure to alcohol brands because of photography as well. So somewhere that also remained. And because of the wine keenness and, that becoming a hobby, me and Sheila started an app called Hipcask.
Yeah.
And Hipcask is where I think we really just kept in touch with more in the beverage space. And I think from there, Swami was a very natural evolution.
And how did Swami happen? How did all of you all sit? I know you mentioned that all of you were in the space and you saw this as an opportunity, but was the initial idea, like I alluded to earlier, we started off with coffee, right? Coffee was...
Yeah. So the first product was coffee. Sahil is my brother-in-law. He was in the coffee space and he was in Singapore for 2-3 years. And he was telling me that, I'm experimenting with a coffee product that I want to package in Singapore. And I was like, okay, how about you think of India? Could be a much larger space to play in, and perhaps I can also work with you on that. Till this moment, Sal and I would have never ever spoken about doing anything together. And Rahul I got to know because of home brewing. And Rahul started Gateway Brewing Company. So, that whole, there was this whole home brewers community in Bombay. So the first time I met Rahul, I think we had about 80 pints of home brewed beer at his house. Wow. So that's how Rahul and I really became friends. And I was getting a beer with Rahul and I was telling him, Sahil has an idea to do something with coffee. I was telling him, let's perhaps do that in India. And not only coffee, we could look at mixers as well.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, Rahul was like, you know what? I want to be a part of this. Let's do this together because I'm super keen on getting into the non-alcoholic space. And it was literally just that. Rahul and Sahil had never met earlier or spoken earlier. We met a few times. And what was really, really good was that all three of us brought a different aspect to the company.
Yeah.
Rahul had set up Gateway Brewing Company from scratch, so he knew how to set up a facility. Silent managed ops in his coffee business earlier, and he came with all of that experience. And I had worked a lot with alcohol brands because of Ipcas. So I knew at least some part of the marketing side and the advocacy side of things. And that's how three of us came together and Svami was started. But we were very clear that we will build a portfolio of non-alcoholic drinks. It won't only be a coffee or a tonic or something like that. We were clear that tonic would be the first product, but that took a while. Initially we were like, how difficult will a tonic water be? And mostly, not mostly, everyone in our space in India, apart from us, goes to a contract manufacturer and gets the product made. So we went to this main contract manufacturer in Pune. We're like, we want to make tonic water. They're like, yeah, tell us what quantity you want and we'll make it. That's about it. And we're like, you know what? Let's do this ourselves. Let's make the recipe ourselves because ultimately we're all getting almost the same product as whatever's already in the market. You'll do one minor tweak or add one more flavor to it, and that's about it. But let's build this completely ourselves. And that's when we realized that maybe it's not that simple to develop a recipe. It took us 6 months just to find the right quinine. Quinine is what gives tonic its bitterness.
Yeah.
And we got quinine from all parts of the world, wherever in India we could get quinine, from Myanmar. That process itself was a good 6-8 month long process. And till then, Sal was like, we already have coffee expertise. We already have a lot of common equipment at the factory that can be used for making nitro coffee. Let's launch with cold brew coffee. And we're like, yeah, why not? We launch it and we'll see how it goes. We did have a hunch that it'll be 10 of us drinking and feeling happy about it. And that's where the market size might end. And that's exactly how it was. So we had some fun with coffee, kept ourselves busy till tonic was launched. I think the moment the tonics were ready to go, the coffee was just scrapped. But yeah, we did start with coffee initially.
Building it yourself, I think, is an interesting part, right? Like you said, I'd say most modern brands these days, and look at most D2C, right? You look at it in personal care, you look at it in this industry. You have a set of manufacturers available. You do a plug and play. You change some ingredients around. You talk to them about what variations they have available, and you go with that. You guys decide to go this way to do it, by yourselves. You have your own, let's say, manufacturing unit. You have your own R&D. So when you look at that now, after these years, what do you feel what do you think that's done to the brand? What do you think that's done just from a consumer standpoint? What has it done from a business standpoint for you guys?
So I think for a consumer, initially it may not make too much of a difference till you really get to know a brand really, really well. But what it's done for us from an industry point of view and a product point of view, one is, of course, R&D. And from day one, complete R&D has been internally. Done internally, not through a third-party consultant sort of a way. It's given us absolute control over our products. When we were launching Swami, I actually flew to LA for 24 hours to pick up a specific ingredient that we were only able to source from one vendor in the US. I literally spent more time on the flight than I did in LA to get that product back. And we could do a lot of those kind of things because we had complete control over our manufacturing. And it's not like from day one we had this most state-of-the-art thing. It was all manual when we started. Only now we have a pretty good setup that way. But it gave us a lot of opportunity to experiment. We can do smaller batches. I can do a 100-bottle batch.
Yeah.
And, not worry about a 20,000 case MOQ from a manufacturer. So it gives us room to innovate a lot. We taste at least 10 new products on a monthly basis at an R&D level. We've already planned, we at least have 40 ready recipes to go if we were to launch products. It gives us a lot of room to do stuff like that. And it gives us, even when it comes to things like collaborations, right? The project we did with Mohit Hennessy India.
Yeah.
Something like this could have never come through if we were not a manufacturer ourselves.
Yeah.
They would have actually worked with a contract manufacturer and done a surrogate sort of a product perhaps. But a lot of the collaborations that we've been able to pull off, partnerships, won't even be possible if we didn't have complete control over what we do. And I do see, and I know this is the new playbook, right, for D2C especially.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it can work in a lot of sectors. But I think, again, for us, having our own facility, it's just these key things. It's not like we'll manufacture everything ourselves for the next 10 years. Some things can be outsourced at certain points, right?
Yeah.
But at least you have your core facility to manage certain products and keep innovating, because what might be relevant 2 years down the line, we don't know yet. But we rather be prepared well in time than, try and copy someone else later down the line.
You mentioned the collab with Moe Hennessy, right? And you also done one with Bira sometime recently as well. There are two of those. And also, you do a lot of these small batches of recipes, which sometimes there are people like me who will say, okay, why have you stopped? Why can't you get more of those as well? I mean, those have happened many times. So when you look at those, how do you kind of differentiate, okay, what's going to be a good small batch? Let's try this one out, and where do you kind of go towards making it long term? Because it's almost like you're taking drop culture and put it into like into the non-alcohol segment. I would associate this with sneakers or with clothes. You just done this to a segment which I've never seen that happen with as much. So what's the thought behind that?
So I'll tell you, actually, all three things have worked very differently. So during the first lockdown, like most companies, we didn't have too much work, and we're like, how do we support restaurants and bars without us giving them cash? We're not a larger Diageo Pernod that can just give out cash. What can we perhaps do for the industry? So we came up with a competition that any restaurant in the country could take part in, whether they were a Svami account or not. In fact, we explicitly put this on our website that if you have a Schweppes exclusive contract, you can still enter. We are not here to, there's not a hard sell for our product. And we gave away about 8 lakhs of cash that we raised from sponsorships to winners of the competition. And the number one, so there were 3 main winners, but the first winner, they got to co-create a product with us. And the winner will get to co-create a ginger ale with us. And this is going to be a part of the competition. That you have to conceptualize the product. You have to tell us, how will you sell the product? How will you sell it to your customers? What do you think we'll put on a retail shelf? And the Jamun ginger ale, which was a limited edition, was genuinely, it was born out of that. And Jamun ginger ale, there was a proper pitch by PCO, why Jamun, how it should be done. They made mock labels, and they ultimately won, and we co-created with them. And that product's coming back in April. We've actually got a very good demand for that product.
Perfect timing, because mine just got to my whatever stock I had amassed, because I love ginger ale in general. And I'd kept that for like a rainy day, and I've just ended up finishing that batch.
Yeah, so that's going to come back as a proper product in April, because we were a little surprised by the offline demand for that. A lot of shops have asked for that product. And this again made us rethink that we should look at some Indian flavors, right? Again, for me, I would rather do a Jamun than an elderflower, because to me, an elderflower looks like a very small segment, whereas a Jamun can have a lot bigger appeal. So that's how something like this collab happened. Something like a Moet Hennessy project was so different, and we were really, really surprised when the talk started, because from what I know, globally, LVMH has never worked with a mixer company before to co-create something. And a brand like Glenmorangie, Belvedere, Hennessy, these are not just small brands, right? These are brands that have absolute global acclaim. So this came out of the fact that lockdown had hit. Even alcohol companies were like, home consumption is what we all need to focus on. And the team at Moet Hennessy India, Sophia had called me from their team and said, you know what, do you think we can even pull something like this off, that we co-create 3 mixers specially for these 3 brands? And it was a good 1 year in the making, the project. And I think the products are going to remain till the end of this year.
Awesome.
And hopefully, perhaps we'll do something more with them after that. Perhaps do a refresh of the flavors. So for us, from a collab point of view, the Jamun Ginger Ale was a very local restaurant, built collab. Moet Hennessy was like the top 3-4 global alcohol companies, sort of a level, international level of a collab. And the Bira was us just, working with another cool Indian beverage brand. And Bira's a brand I love. And I really love what Ankur has built over the last few years. It's not easy to, you look at Bira now and it's so obvious that, this would have worked, wheat beer and this and that, but it's not easy. How many brands have tried to do wheat beer and, they've not gone anywhere. In fact, there were so many brands that launched around Bira, but they're nowhere there now. So the moment Ankur said, should we look at doing a product at the tap room? Like 100% yes, let's definitely do that. Ideally, I would have gone to their Mysore brewery, but again, pandemic situation. So that product came out really, really well. That was more of a hyper-local sort of a collab. It was only at the Bira tap room in Bangalore. But to me, it was just like, these are two more contemporary Indian beverage brands coming together and slightly unusual. You wouldn't have expected us to be working with a beer brand, perhaps.
Yeah. And there's also the recent one you guys did, which I thought was again very interesting. Right? The one with the Maradona edition.
The Maradona, yeah. So for me, that is the drop culture. Like the Maradona one is a pure like a different colorway of sorts, right? How we would have with sneakers. Yeah. So different label. Again, the idea here was when we got talking to Amazon Prime that let's not do a tonic. Let's do a product that is more understandable at a larger scale. And we think cola for that hit well because sports, we think cola can work better in those sort of scenarios. Yeah. And we worked on a label change for the True Cola with them.
And I think that's a unique one, right? I haven't seen something like that happen for a show or a property in a while. So how So let's kind of take a step back and say, how does something like that come about? How do you guys kind of, was that something that they got in touch with you for? Do you guys chat to them? How did this happen?
I think it was over, I think their team had spoken to us about something on Instagram. I'm not 100% sure about what the initial conversation around this was. But the idea originally was that, okay, since this is football, from their point of view, for Amazon, I think it was more like, can we put the Maradona's poster on something that's available at stores or restaurants for people to see. And for us, it was, okay, this sounds really cool from a community point of view. Can we tap into a new community? Can we tap into a football community? Because we've usually not done that. Yeah. If we were not in the COVID situation, again, we were planning to do, let's say, football screenings at pubs. Again, our product then fits there really, really well. Yeah. And for Amazon Prime, again, their show is getting promoted. So for us, a lot of this to do was with offline activation. But now, again, we do that when we do that. But I think it's cool to read. For us, it's reaching out to the football community, which otherwise we didn't know how we would have possibly done.
I have a bunch more questions to ask you, but I know I've been prompted that I need to go in for a break. So just going to do that. Be right back with Advertising is Dead.
Love fighting?
We've got you covered.
Check out our show, The Fighting Goat, where we, the voices of the internet, Arjun Chipalkatti and Somesh Kamra, bring to you crazy weekly action on your favorite combat show, The Fighting Goat.
Be it commentary, breakdown, predictions, analysis of styles and techniques.
And of course, your round of favorite fighters.
You can listen to us every Thursday on the IBM Podcast app, website, and all major podcast streaming platforms.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Aneesh. I want to kind of take this into a slightly different direction, right? I want to say that when you look at that kind of team you guys have assembled, who work with you and who work with the company, and many people listen to this podcast want to work in different sectors. This is obviously a sector everybody finds is going to be super. It's associated with being a fun sector to work with. AI, I don't know if that's a myth you want to kind of cross off, but what do you kind of look for when you look for people to hire, bring in what kind of skill sets, what kind of people really do well in this space?
It is definitely a fun space. I can definitely vouch for that. You play hard and you work hard, of course. I think for a brand like ours or anyone who's building an alcohol or a non-alcoholic beverage brand, right? And there are a lot of them happening. So if you're looking for opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities in the space currently. I think we would really, or at least what we at Svami or I'm in my team looking for is that we need people to come with very, very solid ideas of execution. Because a lot of it is, these days that I'm hearing that we'll do this online and we'll run this ad and boom. But how do you build an offline? Again, I'm saying offline because to me, a lot of our business is offline sales. It's not going to be a online sale predominant business, at least for the next 2-3 years. ultimately what drives someone to pick up a product from a retail store, or what makes someone order a Swami at a restaurant? How do we solve this at every possible level? Whether it is creating scarcity perhaps with a limited edition product, or is it launching a collab with an Amazon, or it is actually doing a very basic menu promotion at a restaurant, right? Everything has to work together, and sales and marketing really has to work together. And I think that is one thing that sometimes gets lost, because a lot of times marketing and sales in smaller companies or startups may not be in sync. And I think whoever joins the teams has to make sure that they're working with the other teams really, really well. And just getting feedback, right? Like if you're doing a certain activity, what's the ROI on that? Like how do you sit and calculate that? Because a lot of these things today are not that easy to pinpoint and calculate. So I think when we are looking at people, we're looking at people who can think in a 360 sort of a way and help out with whatever they possibly can.
And I think also the interesting about just generally, and this is, I think I'm kind of circling back to one of the things you started off with, right, is that people look at this industry as a bunch of different segments. One, they look at one thing as being extremely mass and one thing as being premium. And this goes for everything, right? I mean, I'm talking about even when you look at someone like a like a Pepsi or a Coke, there are some parts that are looked at as extremely massy or otherwise. You guys are kind of maintain that you are somewhere, you are neither pushing yourself to be too massy, neither are you like extreme premium in that sense of the word. And as you add more segments in there, and I was reading a recent, I think an interview all of you all did where you spoke about even something like an energy drink being something that you guys are thinking about.
Absolutely.
As you get into all those spaces, there is a certain brand you kind of built out. So if you had to look at, okay, these are things which you would definitely always kind of keep as part of the brand, and these are things which we've added in specifically for specific product ranges. How would you kind of differentiate that?
So we are very clear that we want to play in the mass premium segment. Even if I give you the example again of the salted lemonade, we could have launched the lemonade at 85, we could have launched the lemonade at 95, but our whole thing was our products have to, especially a product like a lemonade, has to be a lot more affordable than an 85 rupee price point. We see ourselves playing from a range starting at 45 to about 95. And again, a larger portfolio to address all sorts of products in those categories. Like energy drink, for example. I see no reason to compete with Red Bull at a 95 and 105 rupee price point. I'd rather have an energy drink that's at 75 or 65, but be really, really tasty and delicious rather than trying to replicate that high octane, high energy sort of a vibe. That's at least not what we are aiming for our energy drink to be at. So I think it's just important to see what product can fit at what price point. I do think if we were to, for example, make the tonics 65, I think there we might be cheapening the product. But if we make the salted lemonade 85, I don't think we're making it more premium. I think we're just making it niche. So you can be very premium at 65. Ultimately, we want to be about 15-20 rupees more expensive than a super mass product. So if a Diet Coke is at 40, we want to be at 60-65. Even with tonics, by the way, and a lot of people don't realize this, there's 40% GST on carbonated beverages. That's a lot of GST. So when we were doing our initial pricing, that time it was sales tax, GST not come in. Sales tax was about 18%. So Schweppes was at 50 or 55 rupees with 18% tax. And we would have been at about 70-75 rupees. But when GST came in, it became that 18% became 40%. Schweppes did not change their pricing. They ideally should have, but they didn't. And we're like, there is no ways we can increase price point because margins will really go bad. Want to be 20 rupees more than a Schweppes or whichever category we're playing in. We're very clear about that. Even when we're in a market abroad, let's say we're in Singapore and we're doing really well in Singapore, hypothetically, and that's not the case, but I would not want to be cheaper on a shelf against any other international brand and have someone buy me because we are cheaper. I don't want that to be the plug at all. Like even if I'm at a Singapore, I have to be at least the same price as a Fever Tree or perhaps slightly more expensive if required, if that's how the pricing works. But we are not going to play on a price game, even when you go abroad, that where an Indian product might be cheaper, so we might sell more. So pricing for us will always be key, and you want to be that, you want to have that little bit of aspiration value to the product.
You mentioned international markets, and I think both internationally and locally, one strong partner you end up having to focus on is restaurants and bars and everybody else, right? And how have you kind of seen that partnership? Obviously, you spoke about what you kind of did in the early days of COVID, and what came out of that. But over time, what have you seen companies like yours, because you are partners in so many cases? How does that relationship really play out in really being able to? So these are things which we do as a brand or do as a company because we are, this is an entire industry which is almost like plugged in with us, and we plugged in with them. So how does that dynamic really play into things you decide, things you kind of move towards?
So I think our third or fourth hire was our brand ambassador. And, in beverages or especially alcohol, brand ambassador is not a celebrity brand ambassador, but someone who is talking to other bartenders about your brand, doing trainings, making hotel, restaurant staff try the products. And I think Jatin, our brand ambassador, he was the third or fourth person we hired before the product had even launched. And we followed this playbook that a lot of alcohol brands have typically followed. Even Beera's followed the same playbook, that you do your samplings and you first build your brand at restaurants and bars, because their sampling becomes easier. Rather than someone buying a case of your product or spending 500-600 rupees, they're just spending about 100-120 rupees and having it with their gin or whatever your product might be. For us, that has played a very crucial role. What we'll call brand advocacy. That has happened meticulously well. Every bar that we are served in a larger city, Bombay, Delhi, Goa, Bangalore, Chennai, every staff has gone through a Svami training, which has never happened for a non-alcoholic brand in the country. Like when we would do a training, and early days, I've done a lot of those tasting trainings and tastings myself. Staff would not know what is tonic water versus soda. Now your wait staff at a regular place may not even know what the difference is. And we would actually make them try the products and do it to a proper detail, right? Make sure the products are cold for them to try. And we would actually make them try a Schweppes and our light tonic side by side and just see their reaction, because they never realized how much sugar, for example, there was in a Schweppes. So to us, we built our brand with Horeca, with restaurants and bars. And training and making the bar team understand what our product is has been extremely crucial. So advocacy for us is how we basically started building the brand out. And it's a lot more powerful when a bartender recommends my product than anyone else. He or she is ultimately your best spokesperson. If you were sitting at a bar and ordering and someone said, no, you have to have it with Swami, you'll give that some weight.
I think that form of advocacy also, it's almost like this is true blue authentic influencing versus what is other form of influencer culture, I would say, because in some ways the bartender makes a wrong call for other reasons. The fact that drink might not taste the way it needs to taste. So I think that's super interesting. Just kind of look at it from that lens. What's exciting for you as you look ahead towards where the entire space is going, where Swami is going? What trends you're spotting? Because I know that you also do kind of talk about what trends happening in the broader space as well. So what's looking exciting for you as you look ahead?
I think what's going to be exciting over the next 2-3 years is going to be a lot more white spirits. I do think tequila and spirits like those should get a lot more popular. I don't think the gin wave is going to die anytime soon. I think you'll see at least another 10-15 brands out of Goa itself over the next year.
Yeah.
So a lot of white spirit consumption. And I think a lot of brown spirit consumption, but in cocktails or highball forms. Not so much perhaps on ice. So a lot more highballs is, I think, how a lot of whiskey brands are going to push their products out as well. In the non-alcoholic space, again, I think there's going to be, at least for us, a lot of focus on seasonal products, on seasonal ingredients and local ingredients. And I think there's a lot to be explored on that side of things, rather than going to an elderflower or a more international sort of a flavor. Like even with Moet Hennessy, one of the products we made was a pomelo soda.
Yeah.
And, I don't know about too many other cities, but in Bombay, till a couple of months back when it was season time, there are pomelo carts everywhere. And it's just something we never looked at earlier. So I think there's a lot of local produce to explore. And that'll be an F&B as a trending thing for sure.
And I'm kind of going back to the point you made about energy drinks as well, right? You're also seeing this trend globally, and this is me entirely just like going through Dwayne Johnson's feed, and that only talks about one energy drink maybe in my head. But we haven't had anything which is distinctive, and I like the fact that you spoke about it's not just about, because you hear about Red Bull, you hear about Monster, but everything else feels like the same. Like I can't differentiate any of the other brands at all. If you ask me today to name any other brand, I can't. Even though you go to a supermarket, there's an entire shelf full of that. So I think even that space, like since you mentioned it, I was thinking about the fact that we don't have enough of those in so many ways.
Yeah, and we're looking at energy in a very different way. We don't want to be a Red Bull or a Monster replica of sorts. I personally don't like the taste too much either. But what we are developing is a product that you could have right now on a Wednesday afternoon at 2. That can be your pick-me-up. And we don't expect people to go jump off a cliff after having our product, but just a nice pick-me-up.
Speaking of jumping off a cliff, the last part of the show is always me asking my guests a set of random questions. Nothing to do with what you spoke about so far, but I have a feeling for you, some of them might kind of cross-pollinate across. What do you spend a lot of time doing outside of all the stuff you do with Swami that keeps you excited beyond the industry that you work in?
I think just so many hobbies, man. A lot of music, vinyl, sneakers, cigars. I think just for me, again, I think Swami is born out of a hobby, and I think I have a lot of hobbies that really keep me busy.
I've also noticed that you have an interesting take on reels on Instagram, which I think is something which I always enjoy kind of following. That you have a I love to hate you relationship with Instagram.
I do.
In the way I put it.
In the last month, it's been more love than hate, because again, I knew if you can't beat them, you join them. But what's working well for me is that I'm seeing a lot less people dancing on reels.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is fine for me. And my whole thing is, you please dance, do whatever you want. I don't want Instagram to forcefully make me watch that, which I think is happening lesser, at least for me. So that's great.
What can you put together in an instant?
In an instant, I can put together a really good tasting drink.
Anything you read, watched, or listened to recently that you'd recommend?
Very, very random recommendation. I don't read too many books. I did order your book yesterday, by the way. I think that's coming on 9th of Feb. Congratulations on that. I don't end up reading too many books because I think I don't have the attention span to do it. But one book that I just picked up randomly is Court Decisions by Arun Shourie. A very random recommendation. It talks about how a lot of how basically the law can work in our country. And just the first chapter gave me goosebumps. Just hearing his personal journey on the cases he's fighting even now or that are against him. So just something very different. I don't think a lot of us really talk about laws and how a lot of these things work in our country, but very interesting book to read.
And why do you think our need to build distinct products in markets where everything feels like the same not die?
Because I think we ourselves want to have better products, right? Or better choices. And I can speak about beverages because it's so linked to food. We always want better food choices, right? And you'll hear all of us script that, where do we order from? It's only 5 places, it's only 10 places. I think we generally as humans want enough options for F&B. And I don't think that's going to change, whether it's alcoholic, non-alcoholic, veg, non-veg, dessert, savory. Like that'll always be there. We'll always want more choices.
Thanks a ton, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I've had
my pleasure.
I've been meaning to do this for a while, and I'm happy we finally got to do this. Please keep making the Jamun Ginger Ale and everything else that you guys do. And looking forward to your own version of Zoa energy drink, if that's what, or maybe something entirely different. I don't know.
You shall get a prototype.
Yes, I think I watched way too much Dwayne Johnson on Instagram. I should really stop doing that. But more than anything else, just keep doing the amazing things that you guys do. I think you created a very distinct brand, and every time you come with an innovation, you're like, it makes sense. Why didn't someone not do that first?
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing all the new releases and everything else coming up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus talks to renowned film critic, author, and journalist Anupama Chopra about her new book, A Place in My Heart. On Shunyavan, Shriditya and myself are joined by co-founder of Blue Tokai, Matt Chandranjan. We discuss the origin story of Blue Tokai. The Simplified host talked to Dr. Nitin Arora about COVID and its impact on the medical fraternity. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explores what it means to be inclusive and politically correct in today's day and age. And on Tere Mere Raste, Keshav visits Kushinagar, the sacred place believed to be where the Buddha attained Mahaparinirvana. Also, just one quick announcement for everybody. Would like you to check out the new version of our Android app. It's available on the Play Store. It's a really interesting take on how to listen to podcasts. Do give it a look and let us know what you think. We're open to feedback on all of our social media channels. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth really does help. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. And we have a number of channels there at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube where you can take a look at them. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
We know you love fast food,
Fast fashion,
faster payment.
lightning fast internet speed.
Then why not fast information?
On Think Fast, where we discuss the latest developments in the world of technology, business, marketing, pop culture.
With a side of sarcasm and my dad jokes, not just mine.
Not mine, Varun. My jokes are funny. So join me, guys, the funnier one, Suchita Salvan, co-founder of LBB.
And me, Varun Dugirala, the co-founder of The Glitch, as we think fast only on the IVM network.
Fresh episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.